Thank you so much for joining me on this Tune In Tuesday. My name is Sharon Rogers and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Wells, Maine. I try to come to you every second and fourth Tuesday with a special class. Tonight's topic is Vellum. Now, Vellum has been offered in many different ways in the Stampin' Up! Catalog over the years. We have had shimmery vellum, we've had printed vellum. In fact, right now in the mini catalog, we have some printed vellum. And you can't really see it very well. It is on page 46, right down here, but you cannot tell the patterns. So I thought I'd just take a second and show them to you. There is stripes. Now this paper is in 12 by 12, and you get 6 sheets, 2 of each design. And there's a leaf design. And then there is a polka dot design. So that's printed vellum. But tonight's class is going to focus on just regular plain old vellum cardstock. It's a very nice weight and I think you'll enjoy working with it. Now, if you would like to make tonight's projects, I would love to be able to send you a class card kit. To qualify for that kit, all you need to do is place an order of $35 or more before shipping and handling and tax in my online store. The link is down below. This next card does not do anything that is a particular wow with vellum. However, it's a great use of vellum. I'm going to bring in my Good Feelings stamp set. Lots of just great greetings. When you don't need to say a lot, just let the sentiment do most of the work for you. I'm going to use the You're on My Mind and In My Heart. No, I'm not. I lied. I'm going to use the Just So Happy for You. I'm going to ink that in Night of Navy. I'm wasting a bunch of paper here, but it's all right. I'm going to bring in the Scalloped Contours dies, and this is the middle rectangle, and I'm going to die cut this. I love these dies because it gives you some nice stitching and it also gives you a nice scalloped edge. I'm going to bring in a piece of thick basic white cardstock. It's going to be my base. I'm bringing in a piece of the Regency Park Designer Series paper that's cut the same size as the card front. There won't be a white border showing at all. Now I could just add this on here, and that's a pretty card. Put it on with dimensionals, add a little bit of bling perhaps. But look at what happens when I make just a slight adjustment. I've cut this piece of vellum, and I think this is 4 1/4 by, or 4 1/2 by 3 1/4. And if I put that right down there, you can, it doesn't make, a ton of difference, but it just makes it look that much fancier. So I'm going to go ahead and, because it's vellum, I don't want to glue in the corners because that will show. I'm going to just put some in the middle here and adhere that down. And it's slippery. Remember, it's it's not very porous, so it's gonna wiggle until it sets. Give it a little bit of time. I'm gonna go ahead and add some dimensionals to the back of this. And I'm gonna pop this right up. There we go. And you can decorate that with whatever bling that you have. I think I'm gonna go ahead and, let's see, I could bring in these iridescent pearls, but I think I'm still on my rhinestone kick. So let's bring in my rhinestones. Take your pick tool, and don't be afraid to put them on the vellum. Whoops, I didn't get one. Oh, I do have one. It's stuck to the other one. Let's see, where am I gonna go with this? And I think I'll take the little one and I'll go up here. So just a bit fancier. An easy trick with vellum. The first thing we're going to do with vellum is try embossing it with an embossing folder. When embossing vellum, you need to know a couple things. First of all, you need to know what kind of folder that you have. There are 3D folders, like the one I'm going to use today. This one is from the Basics 3D Embossing Folder Set that is an online exclusive. Comes with this one, which sort of produces bubbly type things. Also, there is a crosshatch one and one that's a 5-petaled flower or starfish, whichever way you see it. Then there are other folders, like the one that is this one, which is the gingham folder. And this one is a thinner folder. And so this is not 3D, and your sandwich would be different. This one will produce really great results with no cracking. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. Here is a piece of vellum embossed with this gingham folder. Really pretty. But I wanted to go for a dotted Swiss look, which I thought I could achieve with this folder. Now this is a 3D embossing folder, so it is going to give very deep impressions, and that's part of the problem. Let me show you a couple of ones that I've already done. So if I bring in this little scrap here, this is one time through, and you can see a lot of the impressions aren't circular, and there is some cracking, although it's not cracked to the point where it tore. This one is another one that I did, again, a little bit better. What I did was I used a piece of copy paper on top of the folder and underneath this number 4 plate. If I used, here's that crosshatch one I was talking about. That's pretty busy for embossed vellum, but it's not bad. And let's see, where's the one that I just did? This is a 3D Merry Melody folder, and you can see the cracking here, especially since there's all sorts of strong lines in it. It cracked in several places. So you want to avoid that, and it's really just because it's trying to get a deep impression from the vellum, and the vellum doesn't want to stretch that much. So here's what I did to minimize the cracking and get the best impression. I put my vellum in the 3D folder, and again, this problem is mostly common to the 3D folders. And then I put a piece of copy paper in the folder between the side that says Stampin' Up! And the vellum. And so now when I run this through, make the usual sandwich. And when I'm running it through, I don't even hear the vellum cracking, which I heard most of the other times I was doing this. So now when I take it out, my copy paper isn't nicely embossed. You could use that for something. And then you've got, let me bring this gray piece in. You've got a pretty good impression here. Most things look rather circular. This looks like dotted Swiss, which is what I was going for. Now to attach this to a piece of cardstock, I could use some glue dots underneath these bumps, but remember these bumps are raised, so the glue dots might just go inside and not be of much use anyway. This is one reason why I chose to cut this a little bit longer than I needed it to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to position it about where I want it. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take my bone folder and just lightly score it. Put some adhesive down and fold that over. And so now I have it adhered down without any adhesive on the front showing. I'm going to bring in my piece of Pear Pizzazz, and that's just going to go right on there, so I can go ahead and adhere that down as well. Now, if you wanted to stamp the back of this as well, you could do that, but you'd want to do it before you adhered this layer, obviously. All right, and so now let's decorate this card. I'm going to bring in my Easter Bunny set. Now the punch has been discontinued. Well, it's not discontinued. It's out until May. So, but this little guy is pretty easy to cut out on its own, but we're not even going to do that. I'm going to bring in a piece of, this is thick basic white. You could also use thin. I'm going to ink up my bunny in Memento Tuxedo Black. And I want to get him in from the ends because I'm going to be cutting him out with either a die or a circle punch. Haven't figured out which one yet. Depends what fits. And then I need to color him in. So I'm going to bring in my crumb cake markers, and we're going to start by just coloring in with the light blend. I'm going to leave his ear, his middle ear, open because I want that to be pink. Of course, you could just have a white bunny as well. It's not springtime yet. Oh, I should have probably left his tail white, shouldn't I? Oh, well. Might not be too late. Let's see how much of that my color lifter will take away. Took away just about all of it. Let's see when that dries how that looks. So we'll finish coloring in the rest of my little bunny. I'm going to keep his belly white too. I think my crumb cake marker is on its way out. I've used this guy quite a bit. These blends are consumables. The ink does eventually run out and you can't refill them. I'm going to bring in a little bit of the dark blend here. Give a little bit of shading. around where things kind of overlap or near edges. Okay, let's see. And we'll go back and we'll blend it with the lighter one. So you want to work quickly when you're blending. They blend best when they're wet. Use a circular motion to blend. And I'm just going to give it a faint brush over with the rest of the brush tip, just to kind of blend it all in a little bit more. Also gives it a little bit more depth, like it's actually fur. Okay. Oh, so cute. He is adorable. I'm going to take a little petal pink here. Now that's a little bit dark for me, but the light is a little bit too light. So I'm just going to bring in my color lifter again and color some of that away. And there we have our cute, cute little bunny. Let's go ahead and punch him out. Here's the 2.5-inch circle punch. And yeah, if I just shave a little bit off this edge, I think I'll get it just how I want it. So then we have something that looks like that. Now the 2.5-inch punch is not one they brought back yet. I'm hoping that they do, but you could also use one of the layering circle dies. They come in that size as well. I've gone ahead and I have colored a flower from that set. Well, I guess it's a spray, but I'm going to use it as an adornment for my bunny's neck. Isn't that cute? And you'll notice that I've altered it a little bit. So I cut off these leaves and these berries over here. So I just left this part right here. We're going to go ahead and glue that on my bunny. And I used the Flirty Flamingo to color in the pink. So it's going to match with the cardstock that I've chosen. And let's see, let's just go ahead and put that right there. It's adorning his neck. There, so cute. He's a little spring bunny. Let's go ahead and bring in my bunny. So my bunny can go right here. And then I'm just going to need to put in some sort of sentiment. I need my dimensionals. Pop him off the page a bit. And we'll bring him all the way over. No, we'll give him a little bit of space here, I think. And let's go ahead and let's do Happy Easter. Since Easter's coming up. And I'm going to do a tone on tone. So I'm going to get my Flirty Flamingo out. Now you could choose to put some glue underneath the vellum right in here to make that hold down a little bit more if you want. So there's Happy Easter. Only thing we're missing is a little bit of bling. See, we could put some butterflies on. I don't think I want to put some butterflies on though. Oh, dragonfly. Maybe the dragonflies are too big. Ooh, I kind of like the dragonfly. They're just so shiny. You don't really need very many of them. In fact, one of them's all I'm going to put on here. Take a glue dot and just press my dragonfly into it. And there we go. It's a quick and easy, you know, other than the coloring card. You just need to decorate the inside now. But that is embossing on vellum using your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. For this next technique, I'm going to bring in my Cottage Rose stamp set, and I'll be using this image right here. We're going to be embossing, heat embossing this time, on vellum cardstock. I'm going to bring in my Versamark, and it doesn't have to be Versamark, but because I'm going to be embossing in white, I do want a clear ink. I could use a white ink as well, but I'm not going to be. So you can probably see the sheen. When embossing on vellum, you do need to be a little careful in how you heat it. Because vellum is thinner, it's going to be a little bit more apt to curl. I'm going to bring in some white embossing powder. Well, mostly white. It's a little corrupted, so there are a couple of flecks of other things in here, but and you really don't even need to use an embossing buddy here. The surface is pretty slick and slippery, so there's not much static involved. All right. Let me bring in my heat tool and heat this up. Now the Stampin' Up! Heat tool has two settings. A 1, that's a lower heat, lower airflow, and then 2, which is the high. I'm going to use number 1, and I am a very impatient person, but I am going to use number 1, and I'm going to make sure I am moving this heat tool a lot. I don't want it to concentrate in one area too long, because it will curl the vellum a little bit more. You can also heat from the underside, and that helps to keep things a little bit flatter as well. So the trick here is to be patient. You can burn vellum. I have done it, so I can attest to the fact that you can burn it. Now again, we're trying to go pretty slowly so that we do not, oh, there you start to see it turn a brighter white. Trying to go a little bit slower and keep my heat tool moving so that I don't burn it and I don't curl it any more than I have to. It is really easy to see when you're done embossing on the white or on the vellum, because it is a very bright white as opposed to a dull white when it's not baked all the way. And I think, a little spot right here, I think we're done. So look how soft and pretty that is. And it didn't curl too much, curled a little bit. Now if you wanted to uncurl it, You could hit it from the back a little bit more. Whoops, that's high. I don't want high. But I do want it a little bit curled because I want it to have that dimension of a flower. I'm going to bring in the coordinating dies, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to die cut this image. I'm using new plates because I finally got some. Oh, and I just moved this, so hold on, let's go back and that looks pretty good. And here we have just a very soft element. Let's bring in a little piece of basic white cardstock. And this measures about 3/4 of an inch wide, I think. Let's see, here we go. And we're gonna bring in a piece of, or we're gonna bring in a note card. These are the craft note cards and envelopes, and they're very good value. And one of my favorite things to do with these is bring in some black and white. So this piece, the note card is 3.5 by 5. This piece right here is 2.5 by 4. I'm going to pop that up on some dimensionals. Adhere that to the front of the card. Then I'm going to bring this flower and do the same thing. I'm going to set that right up here. I will be adding, now see, if you add it underneath, it does show through. So I think it's best to add it over the top. And I'm going to shave off just a sliver because it's not quite evenly stamped in there. I'll shave off a sliver, that's good. And then I'm going to cut on a diagonal. And I'm going to try to make the diagonals somewhat the same. And then we're going to just pop that right over here. It kind of goes off both sides. See how that's very, very simple to do. Now, how do I adhere the vellum? Because adhesive is going to show through here. However, if I were to pop a dimensional right in the center of that flower, you really can't tell. And then if I do that here, now I don't want to put a dimensional in between here, I think. I just want to put it over where it comes off the side. Whoops, that's not even a dimensional, that's just the, and so we'll have this running off the side. And we have something that just looks like that. Very sweet and simple. Another thing you could do is you could put some pearls in here, or you can accent it with some rhinestones. Got another package on the way. It's one of my favorite embellishments because they're clear. They go with everything. So let's see, where are we going to put some of these? I think we can put one down here and maybe put a larger one. Looks like I'm out of my medium ones. Or maybe this one goes down here. And we have another small one coming up here. Now this kind of pops off quite a bit. So what I could do is take one of my mini dimensionals. And I'm not sure, I think this might be a little too large to go to hide behind here. So what I'll do, oops, there we go. I'll just cut some of it off. Cut it in half. Then I can put it behind here as necessary. See, that's still a little bit too big. So let's go ahead. Oh, there we go. We've got it rolled up a little bit and it's hiding right behind there. Looks great. It is attached down. It's not going anywhere. It's got some nice volume. Very, very simple card. You can add a piece of white to the inside. I might even suggest white with a black border. Or you can just leave it as is. It's a light enough color so you could write on it just the way it is. Is not the craft black and white stunning? I love it. So my next technique with vellum is similar in that I'm using the cottage rose stamp, and that's about where it ends in similarity. I'm going to stamp on my vellum with StazOn ink, and the reason why I want to do it with StazOn, let me show you on a scrap piece of vellum. If I were to stamp with Memento ink, and we're going to put that one near the triangle part. I'm going to clean off my stamp for just a second. Just take a minute. And then I'm going to ink with StazOn. Vellum is not very porous, which means that the ink is going to stay on top longer. Which means if you don't have a quick drying ink, and StazOn is a solvent ink pad, so it's alcohol based, it is quicker drying than the Memento. If I were to rub my finger over that, no smearing, rub my finger over that, even though this was stamped first, you can see that it's smeared. So if you're just going to be stamping in a black, you would want to use StazOn. And StazOn is only good for red rubber. Do not use StazOn with the photopolymer. They just don't like each other. So they're not good for, StazOn's not great for the photopolymer. I'm going to go ahead and take my StazOn and I'm going to ink up my stamp. When my stamp is bigger, when my stamp is larger than my stamp pad, this is how I ink it. Rubber side up. Put my pad to the rubber. Now let's see how I want this. I think I'm going to want this right in the center here. I'm going to just push down. It's a bigger stamp. Give it lots of pressure, even pressure. And there we go. We have a very, very nice image. Now, because I'm using StazOn, I want to clean my stamp right away to avoid staining. The staining won't hurt it, but it'll look yucky. So you want to get it off as quickly as you can. We do make a StazOn cleaner. Now you can see that I have a little bit left in here. It does come off because that I had stamped with that previously. Just takes a little bit of extra rubbing to get that off. But that's what I mean by staining. But it doesn't hurt and it won't transfer. So now that we've got this stamped, one of the things that I can do is I can flip it over and color on the back side. Now, what color do we want our rose? Let's go for light melon mambo. And we'll bring the dark in as well. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm starting with the dark because I can see, and maybe I need to bring in a piece of something white to put underneath it so I can see the image a little bit better. I'm going to, every place where I see these lines, I'm going to put my dark. Now, blends are alcohol markers, so they're going to dry quicker, just like the StazOn ink. You can use the Stampin' Rake markers, which are water-based, but it will take longer to dry. I come in over the top with my light, and I'm just going to scribble in here, taking care not to go outside the lines. But I'm not really worried about blending too much. Figure that'll take care of itself. Remember, when you're coloring with your blends, you want to use the side of your marker and you want to have a very light touch. You don't want to break down the fibers in the tip of your marker, because then they won't be very precise. Treat it as though it were a paintbrush, because that's really kind of what it is. Right, I'm done coloring that. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my Daffodil Delight for the center here. And then these areas out here are different colors. I'm not sure what I want those to be. Maybe. Let's try a Tahitian Tide. That might be kind of cool. I'm sure that they're probably supposed to be white or just left alone. I'm gonna get my other end out, go faster. This is the light, so it's a very, very light color. And then I'm going to get out a green, and let's go ahead and go with Granny Apple Green. And again, I'm going to bring in the dark one to fill in these lines right here. Everywhere where I see these etch lines, the artist is telling me that's where the darker part should go. Stems. I'm going to bring in the light and go over the rest of it. All right, so that's pretty, right? But look at what happens when you flip it over. It's a very muted kind of look, and it really is just really pretty. Now I've got a couple of white spots in there, which actually don't bother me because it's almost like the light is hitting it. But what I could do is I could come back in and darken up some of the spots. Ooh, it'll get kind of messy there. I do want to follow the lines if I can. Just bring in a couple more. And I'm going to go all over it again with, got other white ones. And I'm not worried too much about getting everything, because when you flip it over, you can see that this looks harsh in here, but when I flip it over, it doesn't look harsh at all. So I will go ahead and fill in just a couple of these white spots though. They look just a little bit too little to be believable. So there we go. We have this beautiful, beautiful rose. Now, what can we do with this? We can die cut it as we did the last one, or we can create a frame for this. Let's do that. Now I can create a frame for this pretty simply with a sheet of cardstock. This measures 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's just a little bit smaller than a card front size. And let's suppose I want to create a frame that is, let's say 1/2 inch wide all the way around. What I will do is move this over to the 1/2 inch mark. And remember, this was 4 inches. So 1/2 inch from 0 is 1/2. And then I'm going to go up to 3 1/2 because 3 1/2 is 1/2 inch away from 4. Then I'm going to turn it. And again, I'm going to put this at the 1/2 inch mark. And I'm going to go 1/2 inch from 5 1/4, so that would be 4 3/4, down to 1/2 inch. And you should see that the cutter, this line right here, goes right up with your other line. I'm going to go 1/2 inch again. 1/2 to 3 1/2. And then one last time. Now I can just use the lines here, but it's 4 3/4 by 1/2. And that should pop out. Now, if you look very closely, you can see that one of my cut marks was a little bit long, but what I can do here is I can emboss this and nobody will ever know. Let's go ahead and bring in my plate, and then I need to have an embossing folder, and the embossing folder that I'm going to choose is the one that looks a little cross-hatched from the new Basics 3D trio of embossing folders. You can't buy them separately. They come in a 3-pack. So one of them is the bubbles one that we used first off. And the other one does sort of like a 5-pointed flower or starfish, whatever you want to call it. I think it's meant to be a flower. I'm going to put this over the top, and I'm going to run this through my embossing folder. And so now, because I have some texture on this, you really can't tell that there was any issue with the corners there. Now, if I were to frame this, this was cut to the same size, maybe a tad bit smaller than my frame, but that works. And the magic happens when you put some white underneath it. It just looks so much nicer. But am I going to put white underneath it, or is there another color that I should be putting underneath it? Let's see. Let's first attach this, however. And we're going to just use a little bit of glue. And again, remember that this is not a very porous substance, the vellum. So I just want a very thin line of glue. And remember, I want the dull side to be showing through, so the bright side gets mounted on top here. I'm going to take care to kind of press in that glue. right. And so now we have this little window. Now let's see what it looks like against some other cardstock colors. If I bring in a piece of black and I set this off, I've got something that looks like that. If I brought in a piece of Melon Mambo, it'll look like this, but that's too close to the flower. I think I'm going to end up liking the thick basic white the best. So let's just see what this would look like. So yeah, there we have something that looks just very delicate. And that's what you're going to, it looks very delicate, and that's the look you're kind of going for. So let's make this into a card. All right, so I have my base here. I'm going to fold this up. And I can use this for inside decoration or on a future card. And to attach this, I'm probably going to use some dimensionals. Definitely want one on the halfway points of each side. Probably could have gotten away with 2 up here as well in the middle instead of just 1. All right, let's flip you over. And there we go. And then we have a very soft and delicate flower. It looks sort of window-ish, sort of stained glass-ish. Now we just need to add some sparkle, I think. So we could add some sparkle, or we could add some decorative matte dots. So this is the color. This is Tahitian Tide. It coordinates with it. You can see that the Parakeet Party looks pretty similar to the green here, even though that was Granny Apple Green, because it's muted by the vellum. That coordinates nicely as well. Let's go ahead and see what we've got when we pull this out, because the Sweet Sorbet might even go. Some of the lighter ones do. So do I want that, or do I want the blingy blingy? You know, there's a lot of mute going on here, so I think I'm going to balance that with some blingy blingy. And I'm not even gonna put a sentiment on the outside of here, I don't think. And let's see. We can put a bunch on here. There we go. Pretty simple card. So in the process of making this video, I've had the occasion where I need a get well card. So I thought I would add that to one of the cards I've created, namely this one that you just saw me create. I'm going to bring in my white embossing powder. I love, those of you who know me know, I love white embossing powder on black cardstock, especially when colors are vibrant. All right, that's good. I'm going to heat this now. Warm it up from the back a little bit. Pop it on the front. Wait for the magic, and there it goes. Start to see it go bright white. There you go. We can put our powder away while that's cooling. Doesn't take very long to cool, but you don't want to touch it right after you get done heating it. It is melted plastic and can burn. But it's all set now. It's just warm to the touch. I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer here. Just trim this down a little bit. That's pretty good. Probably could have gone a little bit more. Sometimes when I try to go a little bit more, it's so close that I can't do it, but this one was pretty good, I guess. And let's go ahead and trim this. Bring in my card here and flag the ends. My end's still a little bit too long. There we go. And we can decide where we're going to put this, here or here. I'm covering up one of my little things there. I think I like it up here, and I think I like it right even with the edge there. Yeah, it's got to come up here. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a little bit of adhesive. That's a lot more than I thought. I'm going to put a little around the top edge. And we will go right like that. Doesn't cover anything, so I don't have to move anything, but it just gives it a little bit more pop. And so now I have a get well card to send. I'm sure she'll like it. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's projects. Vellum really is an interesting paper, and I think it adds quite a bit of sophistication to your projects. Remember, if you would like the class kit for tonight's projects, where you can create 2 of each of the cards with the supplies or with the stamps that you have at home, then simply place an order of $35 or more in my online store. The link is in the description of this video, and I would be happy to send that to you free of charge. If your order is $50 or more, I'm going to throw in not only the class card kit, but some embellishments. So I hope you will try out Vellum, see what you like, see which technique you like the best, and I'd love to know which of tonight's card you enjoyed the most. Thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Tune In Tuesday class.